It all started with that dazzling red color. Two police officers burst into the apartment through the main entrance and froze in fear at what they saw. With a trembling hand bringing the walkie-talkie to his mouth, one of the men immediately requested support for the boy in apartment complex, 3rd building, 403rd apartment. There was a bloody murder in the building, and it's assumed there's only one survivor left. It's been a whole year since that terrible day. There are people riding in a subway car, each going about their own business. At this point, a guy also sitting in this train car was texting someone on the phone. The interlocutor asked the boy not to worry about what happened at school. In response, the boy asked his aunt if it would be better if he just dropped out of school. The woman, however, asked him not to worry about it, after which she promised to sort it out. Thanking his aunt, the boy looked sadly at his phone. The man standing next to him wearing headphones looked at the guy in disgust. A nearby woman and her husband also looked at him with pity. The guy sat with his hands bandaged and his torn backpack riddled with tears. After answering his aunt that he too would try to work things out, the boy sighed heavily and leaned back against the back of the seat. This was his 4th school this year. The boy was ashamed of giving his aunt so much trouble. His name is Baek Gangwon. This guy was born into an ordinary family. Normal, but very good. Went to school, had a normal education in life. That's just the way it was. However, everything changed that night a year ago. Only one of the 4 survived a major murder in a residential neighborhood. The method of murder was highly unusual, and so this case caused concern in the community. The case turned out to be very convoluted, and the police made every effort to solve it, but nothing ever came of it. The only one of the relatives who volunteered to take care of Baek Kangwon was his aunt. But eventually it all went to hell again. One day, Baek Kangwon collapsed to his knees in severe pain. While his aunt was trying to figure out what was going on with him, the guy just sat on his knees and held his eye. Trying to hold back tears, suffering terrible pain, the boy told his aunt that something was wrong with his eye. However, when Baek Gangwon went to the hospital, the doctor looked at the examination results and said there was nothing wrong with his eye. Then, the man suggested that it might have been the result of intense mental stimulation. In addition, the doctor explained that the strange things Baek saw were only hallucinations caused by psychological instability. The doctor promised the boy that after he recovered, he would return to his normal life. But Baek Kangwon himself realized even then that it wasn't as simple as the doctor said. After all, that creature he saw behind the man was definitely not a hallucination. And the strange mark on his right eye is apparently only seen by Baek when he looks in the mirror. His right eye. It's the same place that man touched before he died. When Baek thinks about it, he realizes it's like he's been cursed. The guy has no idea when his eye will return to normal. Moreover, the main problem is that he sees them everywhere. Suddenly, while the boy was thinking about all this, some girl came up to him and addressed him by name. Baek Kangwon immediately looked at her and felt his right eye light up. The girl standing in front of him reminded the boy that they used to study together. The former classmate introduced herself as Wen Xiao, and she had one of those creatures sitting on her neck. The guy looked at Wen and gave her a perplexed greeting. The girl in turn asked the boy not to worry if he didn't remember her already. The thing was, it was very sudden when Baek changed schools. Wen Xiao happened to see a former classmate, so she decided to say hello. She didn't know how he was doing lately, but upon seeing the guy's bandaged arm and the obvious abuse writings on his bag, the girl awkwardly apologized and asked permission to sit down next to him. "Go ahead," Baek replied indifferently, waving his hand at the empty seat next to him. Phantom. That's what the boy decided to call those monsters sitting on some people's necks. In general, normal people don't see them. They stick to people, and so far, Baek Kangwon hasn't had time to figure out the reasons why. Nevertheless, there was something the guy could say with certainty. And just to make sure of his hunch once again, he asked his former classmate how she was feeling. Looking at him, Wen wondered if it was so noticeable that something was wrong. She really hasn't been sleeping well lately. The girl assumed that she was really stressed out about the exams. But Baek already knew what the reason was. Phantoms suck the life force out of their victim. In the long run, the host will become weaker and weaker. It may even be fatal. Recently, Baek has a new attending physician. When the man introduced himself as Dr. Zhao, the boy asked where his past doctor had gone. With a sigh, Zhao told the lad that the past doctor was unfortunately unable to work due to an ailment, which subsequently caused an accident. Unfortunately, Baek Gangwon's past doctor has passed away. The guy still doesn't know how to deal with these monsters, and so he decided to try touching one of them again. Like the previous times, the phantom's touch only left a burn on the boy's finger. Seeing the sudden wound on her former classmate's finger, a frightened Wen asked if he was okay and what had happened. After looking at the wound, Beck replied that he was fine. Then, shifting his gaze to the girl, he gestured confidently for her not to worry. The boy explained that he was perfectly fine, and it was enough for him to just put a band-aid on. All Beck Kangwon can do is just see the phantoms. The phantoms are the only thing Beck Kangwon can do to see the phantoms, and even touching them hurts him, so there's no point in destroying them. On top of that, that degenerate sitting on Wen's neck is also laughing. It really pisses Beck off. I've been noticing here. Wen Xiao suddenly spoke out, glancing at her former classmate. The girl remarked that the guy always gets hurt very easily. It was like that in high school, too. Immediately after that incident a year ago, rumors had spread throughout the school about how strange that murder case had turned out to be. All the classmates knew that Baek had been taking psychological tests, and it alarmed them. This guy didn't talk to anyone or touch anyone. The students were afraid that if he got angry, he would immediately interrupt everyone. There were those who were certain that Baek Kangwon was the killer. One day, Beck suddenly hit his classmate for no good reason. Blood immediately appeared on his cheek. No one paid any attention to it. However, Wen Xiao remembered that incident. After all, it was the very next day that Baek changed schools. The blood was Beck's. The boy he hit was only bruised. That was when Wen noticed that the plaster had fallen on the spot where his classmate had been standing. That meant that if Baek hadn't pushed him, things could have ended much worse. That same day, the girl explained all this to the teacher. But it didn't help. The parents then seemed to have heard some rumors, united and rioted. That's why the teacher told Wen Xiao not to interfere. Looking at Beck excitedly, the girl apologized to him and said that she had always wanted to apologize to him. If she had done more then, he wouldn't have had to transfer. Then, the boy turned to a concerned Wen. With a warm look at her, the boy thanked his former classmate for that. He then clarified that Wen had nothing to apologize to him for. On the contrary, it was Baek who should thank her for her kindness. You can't have good people blaming themselves in this world. It's just outrageous. That was why, looking at Wen again, Baek Kangwon asked her not to worry and promised that he would be fine. That's right, it's all in the past. Since Baek is able to see phantoms, he tried to find a way to rid possessed people of these monsters. However, while the guy was getting hurt, the prejudice of those around him only increased. That doesn't make any sense. Now Beck doesn't want his aunt to apologize for his actions forever. In fact, there is a solution to this problem. All the boy has to do is close his eye and pretend he can't see anything. Maybe that's where he might well be able to live like a normal person. That's right. Baek Kangwon had already decided that he was going to live like a normal person. Meanwhile, the train arrived at Wugongshan Station, and while Wen looked at her former classmate in surprise, Beck felt something strange. The excited girl asked the guy to let her know if there was anything she could do to help. Baek Kangwon, on the other hand, kept his gaze on the man who had entered the car. To be more precise, the creature that was clinging to his neck. It was an unusual phantom. The guy had never seen such a huge monster. This could definitely suck. Realizing what might happen now, Beck immediately told the surprised Wen to come out urgently. "Quick!" shouted the boy, leaping sharply from the seat. However, at the same second, the train doors slammed shut. The people standing at the door could not understand what had happened. Why had the train closed so quickly? Not everyone had even had time to get off. The entire train car appeared to be closed on all sides. It immediately came to Baek Kangwon's mind that it was this huge phantom that had closed all the doors. The boy began to think about what to do next. The other people can't see the monster, so they can't realize the extent of the problem. This creature is clearly trying to trap everyone. People, still not realizing what was happening, noticed that the train still hadn't moved. Meanwhile, a huge phantom began to spread throughout the train car. One man who was about to get off at the station called someone to inform them that he would be late due to a subway breakdown. At the same instant, part of the phantom fell on the man's neck. The man immediately dropped the phone from his hand. In a matter of seconds, the monster spread all over the man's body, causing him to lose consciousness. The man fell to his feet in front of everyone, causing the other people to start panicking. At the same time, the phantom began to split apart and take over the minds of the passengers. People began to fall to the floor unconscious, leaving the others bewildered at what was happening. While the passengers were trying to figure out what had happened, Beck advised Wen Xiao to sit by the door and not move. These people didn't just pass out. This is not a terrorist attack or an infection. The phantom is going to suck the life energy out of all its victims. Baek Kangwon. I had never met such a phantom that could fell so many people and suck the life force out of everyone. If this continues, the outcome is obvious. In this closed train car, worst-case scenario, Bayek will die. Trying to figure out what he should do next, the guy remembered the creature sitting on his classmate's neck. Maybe it could help in this situation? However, all the boy's hopes were in vain. The phantom sitting on Wen's shoulder was so frightened that it shrank several times its size. At the same moment, Bayek heard a child's cry. Crying with fear, the little boy tried to wake up his unconscious mom who had fallen. The other people wanted to help him, but no one moved from the spot, fearing that this child was also sick with something. And even looking at this boy sitting by his fallen, unconscious mother and crying, Beck decided to remain calm. There's no point in him rushing now. There was no way he could confront the phantom. This guy can't even save a classmate. Still, all the people in that train car, including Beck himself, would eventually be caught. Plus, for his aunt's sake, the guy made the decision to be ordinary. And no matter how much Beck Kangwon convinced himself, he couldn't stand by in such a situation. He had to do it again. In any case, the guy himself didn't consider it a mistake. He was able to save a child that a phantom had just tried to take over. Looking at the crying boy, Beck asked if he was okay and if anything hurt. In response, the child only hugged his savior, still not understanding what was happening. Trying to calm the baby, Beck realized that he just needed to avoid the phantom from here on out. Now he needed to get this child to a relatively safe place, but it was too late. The phantom had taken over the entire room. Turning around at the monster pouncing on him, the boy realized that he wouldn't be able to escape. At the same second, a hooded girl ran out from somewhere in the crowd. She immediately pulled a strange black and purple thing out of her pocket. "A black amulet," uttered the stranger, raising her hand upward. After saying that, she released the amulet from her palm, which immediately disintegrated into several cards. With one wave of her hand, the girl repelled the phantom's attack, blowing apart a chunk of its body with her amulet. Her punch was precise yet powerful at the same time. Of course, the phantom was not killed by such an attack, but this girl managed to save the guy and child sitting behind her. Spreading the cards in front of her, the stranger tisked unhappily. "Missed?" the girl muttered, continuing to look where she had just hit with the amulet. Surprised by the sudden appearance of the mysterious stranger, Beck looked at her in surprise. She saved him and that child. Can this girl really see phantoms too? While the guy was thinking about it, the monster attacked the stranger from the other side. The girl did not even look in his direction, and so, receiving a powerful blow in the shoulder, flew back into the door. Realizing that this stranger couldn't see the phantoms, Beck asked Wen to take care of the baby and stay close to the door. More and more people are passing out. This stranger has yet to be caught. Maybe it's the black talismans. But if she continued to sit like this without repelling the phantom's attack, she wouldn't be able to last long. Seeing that the creature was about to strike this girl again, Beck warned her of the danger from above left. Hearing the shout of one of the passengers, the hooded stranger immediately put out her hand and blocked the attack with black cards. The piece of phantom flesh disintegrated without reaching its target. The shockwave made the girl's hood fly off her head. Looking at her hand, the stranger realized that she had actually managed to block her opponent's attack. "Do you really see him?" the girl inquired in surprise, turning around on the boy. Peck replied that if she was talking about a phantom, then yes, he could see them. Hearing that answer, the girl grinned. She was amused by the way the boy had named the creatures. "I think I have found a treasure," exclaimed the stranger contentedly. After that, she extended her hand and summoned a shadow sword. All the amulets merged together, turning into a sharp blade. Drawing her sword out in front of her, the stranger asked Beck where the enemy was. She then demanded that the guy quickly tell her where he was seeing the entity so she could finish him off. Hearing the bewilderment in the boy's voice at the way she called the phantom, the girl explained that she meant the evil dude who was messing around. At first, Beck Kanwan thought she was referring to the phantom's main body, but as he clenched his fist, the guy realized exactly who she was asking about. "Straight! Over that man in green!" shouted the boy, looking hopefully at the stranger. He then explained that the enemy's body was positioned closer to the ceiling. Hearing this information, the girl immediately leaped out of her seat in the direction of the enemy. Putting her sword behind her back, the stranger activated the Spirit Blade amulet. The main question that Beck was worried about right now was whether this girl would be able to finish off this monster. Closing in on her opponent, the stranger delivered a lightning-fast and precise strike directly at the phantom's body. "Bye-bye, how do you like my stealth attack, bastard?" the girl said with a smirk as she looked at the body of her shredded enemy. As she landed on the floor of the train car, the creature's main body exploded above her head. Looking at this girl with shame, Beck tried to figure out what the hell kind of stealth attack in general she had just talked about. Just because she couldn't see the phantom didn't mean the phantom couldn't see her. At the same moment, the guy noticed that the creature started to disappear. All the people who had lost consciousness due to the phantom began to come to their senses. Meanwhile, the girl who had killed the monster began to literally shiver with pleasure. Raising the sword above her head, she shouted with joy. It had been a very long time since she had felt this way. She had finally succeeded in killing the first one. Looking at her, Bayek remarked that it was truly amazing that this girl was able to kill phantoms. However, why does she have these powers but cannot see these creatures? While the boy was thinking about it, a stranger approached him. Walking up to the guy closely, the girl looked him in the eyes. Then she pushed back into the seat. The girl pressed him against the wall and asked her brother what his name was. The boy immediately told her that his name was Baek Kangwon. "That's a good name. My name is Yoon Hwa Jian," said the girl with a creepy grin. "Brother, let me clarify two things. First, the creatures you saw are not phantoms, but they are inanimate. Second, cooperate with me and be my eyes. Otherwise, I will gouge out your eyes and take them for myself. A year ago." Dropping to his knees, Beck demanded the guy on the floor tell him what had happened. Grabbing the gray-haired boy by the scruff of the neck, he asked why his mom and dad were lying dead. Then, the boy sitting on the floor looked at Beck and replied that it was him. Hearing this, the dumbfounded Baek Kangwon froze in place in fear. "I killed them," the gray-haired guy replied, looking up at him. Letting go of the boy's shirt, Beck looked at him in horror, not wanting to believe what he was hearing. At the same moment, a gray-haired guy grabbed him by the back of the head. Pulling Beck up to him, the boy asked him to take a good look in his eyes and realized that he wasn't lying. The guy holding Peck by the back of his head said he saw their flesh tearing with his own eyes, heard their pleas with his own ears. The gray-haired boy pulls out a knife in which Bayek sees his reflection. The killer used the knife to cut off his parents' lives. A bloody guy sitting on the floor asks Beck to confess. He shifts the knife into Bayek Kangwon's hand. Shifting the knife in his hands, the gray-haired guy, looking into his eyes, asks, "You still don't hate me either?" Bayek Kangwon is very confused, holding the knife in his hand. He doesn't answer the question. The man sitting on the floor says with a smile that will help him one last time. He grabbed his knife hand tighter and took a swing. Bayek stares dumbfounded and doesn't have time to do anything. The dark-haired guy wakes up abruptly lying on a sheet on the floor. He stood up and put his palm on his forehead. There was commotion around him, and people were being treated. He sat with his palm covering his eyes. Bayek Kangwon thought about what had happened in the past. He was pulled from his thoughts by a guy who said hello to him. The man was glad that Peck was finally awake. The dark-haired guy doesn't know the person speaking to him. The man with a smirk on his face introduced himself. "My name is Wang Zhe, or the Watcher." Bayek didn't understand what Wang Ji meant by watching. The man explained that a beholder is someone who sees things that ordinary people don't see. The guy sitting on the floor realized what Wang Ji was telling him. The man was glad that Bayek knew everything. Wang Ji waited for the young man to wake up so he could ask him a few questions. He asked the dark-haired guy if he remembered passing out. But it suddenly hit him and he remembered something, as evidenced by his facial expression. On a subway train 30 minutes ago, the blonde-haired girl threatened Beck with her sword, forcing him to cooperate with her and be her eyes. Otherwise, she threatened to gouge out his eyes and take them for herself. The dark-haired guy doesn't know what the girl is talking about, and he's intimidated by her menacing smile. It was the first time he had met a man capable of such a thing. Looking into her eyes, Beck wants to say something. A piercing shout is heard, which is addressed to the girl. "You, Huajan! Why the hell did you leave me?" Someone's foot stopped the train doors from closing. The blonde-haired girl is annoyed at what's going on. She addressed Peck as a sibling and apologized. And with a quick swing, she struck a point on the back of his neck, causing the dark-haired guy to pass out. Wang Ji shows a videotape demonstrating the cause of the victim's loss of consciousness. The victim is Baek Kangwon, who realized the cause of the slight headache. The man asks if the man has anything to say for himself. Wang Ji was addressing that blonde-haired girl named Huajan. She considers Beck an outsider in front of whom it is inappropriate to reprimand her. Huajan told the dark-haired guy about inanimate and further knocked him out. Wang Ji thinks she did it to hide something. In her defense, the girl said that the words came out of her mouth. The very man who prevented the train door from closing is ordered to confess the thoughts of his actions. The girl in the cap from the second group of dead is Yu Mumu. She will be lenient with Huajan if she confesses, but if not, the punishment will be severe. Yu is strict on the blonde girl because she repeatedly interfered with her duties. Her good guy installed a program to block information on the cap girl's phone. And also Huajan got there early and got rid of the inanimate. The blue-haired girl in the cap turns to Huajan in a rage. You've got a lot of courage. Well done! Wang Ji, with a smile on his face, reminds Mumu of her expression. Yu Mumu came to her senses and apologized, but she was still furious. Her anger turns into action, and she grabs Huajan in a stranglehold. She wants to burn the blonde-haired girl despite going to hell. Because of Huajan, Mumu has nothing but trouble, for she has had a nervous breakdown. She has gotten fat. The girl keeps disrupting her work, and she has been deprived of her annual bonus. As the girl in the cap blows off steam, getting back at the culprit of the celebration, Baek Kangwon turns to Mr. Wang Ji and asks, "Are they dead?" The boy's thoughts were confirmed. The girls belong to a special government department. Watchers find them and raise them, special servants that can see the inanimate and kill. The Watchers give them daily assistance. Also, the Watchers cannot see the inanimate. Only the dead can see them. Peck concluded that you can only become dead if you see inanimate things. The boy turned to Huajan, who is still trying to cripple Mumu, and asked a question based on the findings. He thinks that asking her to become her eyes is to help her become a full-fledged dead person. The blonde-haired girl was angry that he asked that, and Yu Mumu understood everything. The girl in the cap realized exactly what Huajan was trying to hide. She tried to hide Baek Kangwon. The blue-haired girl started to remove her cap and introduced herself to the dark-haired guy as Yu Mumu, a member of the dead. Baek, with an indifferent look, also gave his name. Mumu clarifies again whether the dark-haired guy can see inanimate things. As the boy answered the question, the girl smiled now and then and thought that he was her type. Only guys usually get scared and run to the hospital. Baek clarifies that he was on the very train where the inanimate appeared. Wang Ji confirms this by attaching words about the archive. However, there are many things in the world that cannot be explained by common sense, as well as situations that defy logic. Baek Kangwon agrees to cooperate and question the experts. Continuing to stare at the guy, Mumu silently grabs Huajan's hood. The blue-haired girl took an interest in the boy. She asked him one last question about his age. A dark-haired guy with gray eyes turns out to be a 15-year-old high school student. This news disappointed Mumu, for there was only a year left. Peck doesn't understand what the girl means. Paying no attention to the boy, the blue-haired girl, raising her hand, on which a glowing pattern is formed, says indifferently, "Puts!" A powerful energy suddenly appeared, which Baek Kangwon also suddenly felt. The energy that came out of nowhere in the form of a hand held Baek back. He doesn't know what's going on. He can't see, but he can feel the invisible body that has him restrained. Mumu stands over him, saying she doesn't have to explain anything to the common man. She'll just erase the dark-haired boy's memory. It will also seal his ability to see the inanimate. Baek will forget everything and live a peaceful life. The guy won't move, but what the girl is planning to do, he doesn't want to let happen. Under the hand that still squeezes him, he thinks he promised himself he'd live a normal life for his aunt's sake. He recalls a moment where, with bitterness on his shoulders, he talked to the gray-haired guy who killed his parents. Suddenly, the guy's eye began to burn with bright purple rays. With utter hatred in his eyes, the guy has memories he won't be able to unremember. Out of the corner of her eye, the blue-haired girl notices movement. Threatening Yu Mumu with a sharp object, Huajan stops the girl, saying that enough is enough already. The blonde-haired girl, still holding the point near Mumu's neck, says that just because she can't see inanimate things doesn't mean she's weak. Huajan says to stay away from him because she's appropriating the guy for herself. This kind of behavior of a subordinate really annoys Muma. Wang Zhe intervened in the altercation between the girls. The man dispersed his hand while saying that this procedure is assigned by the caretaker, and the girls shouldn't fight here because the room they are in is for the staff. Wang Ji will report the special boy to the top, then they will decide how to proceed. A man addresses Mumu Huajan, who is fighting with Mumu. She will be punished for her disobedience, but as for the said partnership, the girl is unlikely to have discussed anything with the guy. If Huajan wanted to invite someone to join the team, it would take a lot of work to prove the sincerity of his intentions. The girl didn't think of that. The blonde-haired girl pondered the caretaker's words. She sat down on her knees in front of the dark-haired boy. Huajan apologizes for what she did on the subway and for wanting to gouge out his eyes. It was just a joke. Yu Mumu is stunned by the details of the incident as the caretaker stands with a calm smile on her face. In a calm, measured atmosphere, Huajan invites Baek to be her partner again. The blonde-haired girl looks hopefully into the boy's eyes as he thinks over her words. The guy doesn't seem to realize what's going on. Huajan, who had threatened to gouge his eyes out a while ago, sits right in front of Peck and with a cute smile on his face, waiting for him to agree to cooperate. They were distracted by a sharp, loud sound. Baek doesn't realize what's going on, and at the same time, the caretaker's face and Mumu's expression change. There's a notification on his phone about something serious. Urgent task. Determine if there is an inanimate. The second group is closest to the target. Urgent mission. Yu Mumu orders him to stay in the office and not come out, asking Wang Ji for the coordinates of the inanimate object. Dong District, Busan. They'll be there in 15 minutes. Peck jumped up sharply from the floor. He turned to the departing Mumu and Wang Ji and interjected about the city of Busan. The girl in the cap is very annoyed that the guy is distracting them from their urgent mission. They need to hurry. In the place where the inanimate is supposed to be, his aunt lives. Peck is very scared and excited. The boy is agitated. He tries to call his aunt, but all he hears is a dial tone. He still calls her. She should be home, but to no avail. The caller doesn't answer. Peck keeps calling and calling. He doesn't want to think and believe that his aunt is in danger. The guy is really panicking. A phone ringtone is heard in the house. The phone lies on the floor, ringing off the hook. But there are scarlet bloodstains next to the phone that Kangwon is calling. A year ago, they started recording an interrogation in the room. Initially, the two men wanted to be sure of something. A picture of a blonde-haired boy is shown, and it is clarified that this is one of the dead, a child who was adopted by his parents 6 years ago by Tsu Yu Yue. The interrogator stares at this photograph in silence. Baek Kangwon confirmed what the interrogator said. The interrogation continues. According to Baek's testimony, he returned home and found his parents dead, and his brother confessed that it was him, after which he forced him to kill him with the same knife he was holding. Devastated by the memories, Kangwon reiterates his testimony. The interrogators look at each other in silence. One of them, the one with glasses, started yelling that it was impossible. The murder weapon was not found at the scene, nor were there any wounds from a sharp object on either of the deceased. As for Baek's brother, Tsu Yu Yue, a forensic medical examination determined that the cause of death was cardiac arrest. The fatal wound mentioned by Kangwon was not determined. The dark-haired guy doesn't believe what the interrogators are saying. Baek's brother, Tsu Yue, died before his parents, so his parents' murder couldn't have happened because of him. The police are concerned about the boy's psychological state. Kangwon leaps off his chair in a rage, slapping the table with his palms, shouting that this is impossible. Crumpling a picture of his foster brother, the guy yells, "Obviously, I've got him with my own hands." Police have no suspicions about Kangwon and hope the boy will undergo psychotherapy. Baek, standing with a blank stare, can't believe his eyes and ears. He is confused. The boy screams and asks for Mumu and Wang Ji. He asks to be taken with him. His aunt lives in the building and he can't get in touch with her. Mumu says with a serious look that they're not playing games. Even if there's an inanimate there, what good is the guy? He'll just be in the way, complaining that the group didn't save his aunt. Huajian notices how poorly Baek is holding up emotionally. He recalls the moment when the girl put her hand on his. His aunt was sitting on her knees in front of him, trying to support him. Kangwon, barely holding back tears, asks them to take him because he only has his aunt left. Looking at the dark-haired guy, Huajian is surprised by his behavior. The girl says, "Together, so together, I want to go too." Mumu is clearly not happy about this. While the Cap girl is outraged at her subordinate's insolence, Huajian is confident that as long as she and Kangwon are together, safety is assured and the mission won't be affected in any way. Grabbing Baek's arm, the blonde-haired girl wants to lay down conditions if they're not taken to task. Motioning for the guy to come over, Yu Huajian promises to come over there quietly. The boy looks at the blonde-haired girl. She looks forward with confidence, for nothing can stop her. Bright beams and the loud sound of a siren. You can hear the screaming coming from the car. While Mumu thinks in anger that they'll figure it out quickly and Huajian glows with joy, Wang Zhe thinks that two people shouldn't cause trouble. Baek Kangwon thanked the girl for her persistence and perseverance. The girl glows with her confidence and cunning. If the guy is really grateful to her, though, he should consider offering to partner up. Sitting in front and listening to all the conversations, Mumu warns the guy that fighting inanimate things is not child's play, so his decision must be considered. Huajian is annoyed that the girl in the cap is sassing her. Looking at the phone, Yu Mumu utters, "For example, the Busan building. I agree with the information from the caretaker. There has been an increase in tenant disappearances over the last month. No matter how many times we investigate, there are no leads. It's a real cannibal house. Police officers who cordoned off the area noticed the vehicle approaching. The car stopped in front of two police officers. Wang Ji got out of the car and wanted to go to the scene of the crime. The policeman tries to stop him by saying that outsiders have nothing to do here. The man shows his ID to the policeman, saying, "Caretaker, the top brass sent us." His award features the organization's symbol. As if pierced by an arrow, the policeman recognized the emblem on the card. Wang Ji, who was missed by a cop, asks for a description of the situation. The policeman said that the previous day, 2 policemen were investigating a disappearance case, and about an hour ago, they were informed that there was something wrong with the house, both inside and outside. Therefore, the decision was made to contact the organization. Hurrying to the scene of the incident, the man asked the police officer about the full evacuation of the house. Wang Zhe asks Mumu's assessment of the situation, to which she replies that the situation is not good and things are not good for them. Looking at the house surrounded by dark energy, she says, "The big type got caught." She turns to Peck and asks if he sees it. The boy sees everything and is determined, because his aunt is in the house. He grabbed his hand. Kanwan calms himself down because he's scared. The second group went forward, Peck needing to just follow them. He's doing it to make sure his aunt is safe. There's a lot of liquid on the floor. 4 people stand in a room with blood covering the entire surface. Peck looks down. He can't believe it's blood. The boy is overcome with a wave of thoughts about that fateful event. Mentally, he relives those moments again. A hand lands on the guy's shoulder. It's Wang Ji who tries to calm a downcast Kanwan. He says that this is not the same house he was in a year ago. The man goes on to say that some inanimate creates such an environment to scare people. It doesn't have to be real blood. Wang Ji asks the boy not to think about it and not to let himself be fooled. Mumu can't see the inanimate, so he turns to Uncle Wang. The man says that the structure of the building is not the same as in the plan. The stairs are gone, and there are only 2 elevators. Wang Ji doesn't know what the symbols on the doors mean, but they have no other options but to enter the elevator. Huajian is worried about Bayek. She asks what's wrong with the boy from Ji. Kangwan's eyes are devastated. He's back to that day again. He has a look of horror on his face. Wang Ji, taking the boy aside, said, "It's hard for him to adjust to the surroundings. That's why I didn't want to bring him along. I'll take him out first." Bayek has a post-traumatic stress disorder, even though he's just walked in the door. The man was very tense about something. He turned around, but the exit door was very far away. Wang Ji was very confused by this, because they didn't move from their seats as they walked in. Mumu shouted the word "coming" loudly, whereupon the group got into position. The object coming appeared to be an elevator. It started moving. The left elevator, with the circle symbol, began to open. From the inside, it was flooded with red light. The right elevator, with an X symbol on the door, opens at the same time as the left elevator, still glowing red from inside. The whole group is at the ready. A breeze began to blow from the elevator doors, but in a moment the breeze changed to a strong wind, from which I had to cover myself with my hand. Wang Ji and Bak were in the elevator. The whole group ended up in the elevator in pairs. Mumu, with a cheerful mood, wondered why the inanimate was so fussy. She informed Uncle Wang that she and Yu Huajian were in the elevator. The man reports that he and the boy are together and that they are in the right elevator. He asks to report the situation. Is there anything unusual with the girl in the elevator? The girl in the cap reported nothing, but that they could ride up. Huajian is surprised that the elevators are next to each other and can hear each other. The elevator where the man is with the boy only goes down, but the man reports that there is no basement in the 7-story building. Hence, the inanimate affects the space. Mumu took the said words to heart. The girl kicks the elevator door sharply with her foot. Wang Ji calls out to the boy, calling him a burden, and asks which apartment his aunt lives in. Mumu turns to the guy, saying that she doesn't care why he's turned into a helpless creature, but since he had the nerve to go with them, he might as well do something to help. The girl asks one last question to the pony girl. Or is there no one left for you to save? After the provocative question, the boy's mind cleared. Still leaning his foot on the door, Mumu hears the answer. His aunt lives in apartment 403. The girl in the cap didn't answer anything at first, and a smirk appeared on her face. At this moment, Huajiang hits the elevator with his palm. At the same time, Beck punches the elevator button with his fist. While Mumu says "see you later" with a smile on his face, Huajian feels very doomed. At that moment, while the man remains calm, the young man has regained his composure and is determined to move on. Beck had not been able to sleep properly for a long time after his parents died. Night after night, a horrifying pain devoured him from the inside out. And as the boy sat in endless darkness, there was only one thing that saved him. It's his aunt's concern for him. The girl sat down next to the young man. She put her arm around the boy and stroked his hair. His aunt told him, It's okay, take your time, I'll still be around. The elevator rattles downward. The young man and the man stand silently across from each other. The elevator beeps, notifying them that they have arrived at floor 0. The elevator doors begin to open, flooding the space inside with bright sun-like light. Bayek and Wang Ji assess the situation on the other side of the door. What he sees shocks the boy. He covered his nose against the pungent odor. In front of his eyes, a whole bunch of people lay lifelessly on top of each other. The boy thinks they're all dead. Wang Ji examines the victims, reporting that those who were closer are already dead. The man believes that these are the first missing and that they still have some life left in them. Pointing to the girl lying before him in tears with lifeless eyes, the man says it's too late. They can't be saved. Taking his hand away from his face, Beck clarifies what life particles are, and Ji explains that it's the energy of a living soul. Holding his hands in a prayer pose, Wang Ji says, "Beings have it from birth. The energy of life and the energy of death are the two components of the living soul. When working together, these two components maintain a balance in the level of life. Everyone has a certain amount of life energy from birth, and over time it gradually dissipates. When the amount of energy is 0, the soul detaches from the body and enters the afterlife due to the effects of the energy of death, and the body dies because the soul leaves it. Inanimate things need life energy to exist, and ordinary people who can't see them are like walking stakes, eliminating the inanimate that so loves to dabble in the energy of life. This is the work of the dead." Wang Ji got up from his knees. Now they were just standing in front of a pile of bodies. So many people have already died. Bayek becomes more anxious as he observes this picture. Wang Ji turns around and tells him to go look for apartment 403. He asks the young man when he last contacted his aunt, to which he replies that it was in the afternoon, and messages were exchanged. An inanimate limb appears on one of the railings. About a dozen inanimate devils flew towards Wang Ji and Kanwan. The boy shouts, "Wang Ji, inanimate! There are a lot of them, even too many." The young man doesn't know what to make of the teeming pile of inanimates. Mr. Wang Ji is not dead. He doesn't see a whole crowd of phantoms. The boy doesn't know how to go on. The man takes off his coat and in passing asks to be told where the inanimate things are. He asks the boy not to worry. He tossed his coat into the young man's hands. Rolling up his shirt sleeves, the man tells the guy, "Don't worry. Every caretaker is a retired dead one." Mr. Wang pulls his blade out of its scabbard. Walking confidently towards the inanimate ones, Wang Zhe, holding his blades in both hands, determined to deal with this shit. Mumu is bored and unemotional about where the inanimate is. With a quick jerk, Huajan strikes the phantom with his sword. The girl in the cap, shaking the wall, reports that the floor is cleared. Restraining the inanimate with a magical hand, Mumu considers the small thing done. At that moment, the phantom spoke, "A girl, young, good food." He gave her a look of annoyance and disgust. In response, the girl squashed him like a bug. Mumu thinks the symbols on the doors had no deep meaning. Just, "I want to eat," and "I don't want to eat." The elevator took the girls to the 7th floor and disappeared. Apparently, the man responsible for the celebration is not there. The girl in the cap is not going to sit idly by and says the following plan: go down through the fences even if the stairs change. Clearing layer after layer, they'll come across the man in charge, or Wang Ji. The blue-haired girl in the cap fell abruptly silent. Mumu shouts in fury at Huajan, who is leaning doomfully against the wall. "Stop it, you Huajan! Why do you look like a real dead person? You're annoying! Pull yourself together and get to work!" The blonde-haired girl asks why. Huajan was upset that she wasn't together with the young man. She wanted to get close to him. Mumu teases, saying it's a pity that the girl is with her. The blonde dreamer thinks of her and Peck. She imagines the heroics of saving the boy, and also believes that if they were, they would definitely be partners. Mumu strongly disagrees with her assertions. Huajan resents the fact that reality is not like TV. The girl in the cap is a little disdainful of the blonde girl's opinion and thinks her worldview is strange. Mumu mentally talks about how embarrassing it would be for Baek if he found out about this. Yu wants to know the reason for Huajan's obsession with Baek. In other words, she wants to convey to the blonde that the boy could lose his ability in as little as a year at the age of 16. Kanwan is an ordinary mortal, unable to use magic. Mumu feels that the boy is no match for her. As the group drove toward the scene, a girl in a cap watched his case. The blue-haired lady was worried because he had strange notes about a year-old murder in his file. She also wanted what else he was suspected of, but Huajan interrupted her. The blonde asks that Mumu not forget that she was born without the ability to see the inanimate, hence the stigma of being defective. But Huajan has not resigned herself to this fate, so she needs Bake. Mumu listened without interrupting too. The girl in the cap exhaled noisily. Mumu lets loose with Huajan's actions, but asks her to be careful. Yu also doesn't fully understand why Kangwon isn't as simple as he seems. Mumu suggests, a guy who's always depressed. It feels like someone is pulling his strings and he can't even resist. But when the string breaks, Mumu is afraid. They are distracted by the noise of the green beam streaming upward. The girls watched in silence. It turned out to be green fireworks. Mumu says it's Uncle Wang's signal. Chopped in half inanimate. It's Wang Zhe, killing phantoms with dexterity and cold blood. Thanks to the boy's ability, the inanimate things around him popped like balloons. Kanwan is amazed at the man's strength. Watching the strong Mr. Wang, the kid feels useless because he couldn't help in any way, except for a few hints. Peck wonders if this is the caretaker's power. Wang Ji noticed something. The door to my aunt's apartment is open. Behind the man appear Huajan and Mumu, who felt strongly for him about the boy, while Wang Ji and Mumu decide that they need to make sure about Auntie's safety and deal with the job as soon as possible. Huajan runs to hug her little brother. That is, Baek. Kanwan pondered. He felt like things had gone too smoothly and he had missed something. While Baek is lost in thought, Second Yu and Wang want to check the apartment. Kangwon recalls Uncle Wang's words. This 7-story house has no basement, which means that the inanimate affects the space. On the whole building. In the background, wondering boy, a huge inanimate mouth appears. The guy's right eye begins to react to the dark energy, which Pak himself senses. Mumu, standing not far from him, notices the same thing. With a lightning-fast reaction, Yui fulfills the call. But she didn't have time. The boy was swallowed up by the damn thing, leaving only the boy's jacket. Along with Peck, Huajan disappeared as well. Mumu is cursing out loud because of the situation that happened. Wang Ji looks much calmer, but that's for now. The apartment they wanted to check out was not the right one. It was a hoax. The inanimate was able to fool our comrades easily. Sitting on the floor, Peck is shaking all over. With a not entirely friendly smile, Auntie calls him Kangwon. Guy was hugged by Huajan. He doesn't want to believe what's happening. The blonde-haired girl, enclosing the guy in her arms, asks him to calm down and answer her. In the background, sitting on the floor of young people, stands a huge inanimate, rather even a monster, with the same enormity of the mouth and the head of his aunt on top. The creature calls the boy by name. Huajan, hugging him with one arm and holding his blade with the other, asks him, "Are we seeing the same thing?" The inanimate in the form of his aunt continues to call the boy incessantly. He can't hear his partner. He's consumed with loss. There is an inanimate hulk looming over the young men sitting on the floor that won't stop calling out to the boy. Huajan becomes convinced that they are seeing the same thing. Only the sight is one of unpleasantness, a terrible illusion. The girl activates her attack. Her weapon zippers past her eyes and heads toward the madness. The gun hits the bullseye. Right in the brain of the ant's head. The girl continues to use her magic. The inanimate screams in terror, as if he's been electrocuted all over his body. At the scream of this monster, a young boy rushes in. He is stupefied and doesn't want to believe that his aunt is a monster in the flesh. The girl clutched the guy's face with her hands. She made his face closer and asks for a closer look. Huajan asks not to let herself be fooled. She sees the creature too, which means it's not a real inanimate. The girl asks the confused guy to look closely so he can see. He closed his eyes, brought his mind back, and with his mesmerized eye, he decided to look around. This creature, like a mirror, has disintegrated into shards. It was just the two of them, safe. Baek abruptly sensed something amiss. Behind the girl, Kanwan saw the carcass of an inanimate. This critter with a cocky smile is between the couch and the coffee table. Without wasting a second, Huajan rushed towards that thing. From her magic cards, she formed a sword. She prepares to strike blindly as she's coordinated in words by Kangwan. The fat thing didn't expect such a fast-paced event. After dodging Huajan's sword strike, the scum slipped through the wall. A black crack formed in the wall. Baek reports that the inanimate has escaped. The girl notes that the creature is too smart. Kanwan repeats to himself, "Don't let your guard down." No one knows when or where the inanimate will attack them. Glowing with joy, Huajan turns his attention to something behind him. On the stairs sat an exhausted, wounded aunt. When Peck saw her, he rushed over to his aunt. Huajan says the aunt is just unconscious, and luckily she was only lightly hit. You can see that Auntie's okay, even though she's a little hurt. Baek Kangwan exhaled with relief, for Auntie was practically safe. Huajan looks at the guy with a thoughtful look. The girl stands up and says that Mumu and Wang will find them soon, and she will go to control the situation, while the guy only needs to take care of his guardian. Baek is worried about the girl, since she can't see inanimate things. She asks not to think about it. Despite her lack of ability to see the inanimate, the girl is able to keep herself safe. She has a magic bell in the shape of a campanula flower. It had already gone dark outside, and the 7-story building in which the entire group was trapped was plunged into darkness. The golden bell on Yumumu's hand is ringing. The girl swears involuntarily, saying that she is not answering. The girl in the cap tried to contact Yu Huajian. Wang Ji comes in, saying he checked everything. The inside is empty, but the place doesn't look like the young aunt's apartment. He shows the photo and informs us that another family lived in the apartment. Mr. Wang says, "This 403 apartment is also fake." Mumu punches the railing with his fist in anger. She's pissed off that the spatial change affects everything and causes a lot of trouble. Belle Mumu can't track down the kids. The girl believes that they are powerless as long as the enemy has this ability. A search of all the apartments makes no sense. The girl has a hunch that as soon as they get close to Huajian with Kangwan, the guys will immediately be moved to another part of the building. Mumu doesn't realize that the inanimate is so passive. The longer they just sit in this building, the less likely they are to save any of the survivors. The girl believes that this thing's plan is to deal with everyone one by one. Wang Ji, as always, says with unwavering calmness that he thinks otherwise. Mr. Wang states his theory. If everything is as you say, what is the point of separating us and then letting us all come together again? So that we can be separated again? Why so much unnecessary action? Even if he wanted to give us to the small inanimate things to eat, but why is he still hiding in the shadows? The man thinks it's all more like surveillance, searching for a target, than trying to kill everyone one by one. Peck gently wraps the wound on his aunt's arm. With his wounded hands, he tied a bandage around the woman's shoulder. He looked wistfully back into his thoughts. The guy remembers this tragic event over and over again. Peck thinks a little more, but he notices something. The red thread that was on Auntie's little finger breaks. The concerned young man notices that Auntie is waking up. Peck almost gleefully asks if she can hear him. The woman turns around and asks who the young man is. Beck doesn't believe it. He's in a stupor. The woman compliments his horror with another question. Why do you call me Auntie? She notices Huajian and becomes displeased because she doesn't understand what is going on and what these two have forgotten in her house. The young man says his name hopefully, asking if she doesn't remember it. He asks her not to worry, but she interrupts him and says no with a nonchalant face. Looking into the guy's eyes, she says she doesn't know him exactly. He remembers her support when he was going through a very difficult time. Memories are shattered as the woman destroyed the peace inside the guy with her words. The fact that she forgot him. The world and his hope shattered, he was alone. Alone with his thoughts. Again, it's that scene with his younger brother who asks Beck, "You can't be without your family, can you?" Kui Yue couldn't stand his older brother. Holding Beck Kangwan, who was covering himself with his hands from the horror of what was happening, with a sinister smile on his face, Tsu purposely left the best service for his brother. His younger brother let go of him and stood beside him. Beck covers his eyes with his palms while Tsu Yue stands by his side and says that if he remembers one day that it's all just a lie. That Beck should know that his little brother will come when he comes angry. The brother talks about the hell that awaits him after death. The string that was being pulled broke, and something woke up in Kanwan. At this time, Huajian was in the kitchen. She created a safe barrier out of her magic cards. It comes from the bell that's taped to her hand. One of her cards behind her back vibrates. Card after card is pounded into the walls of this space. This formed a magical web forming a barrier in the apartment. Huajian did this to keep them safe for a while. Maintaining the barrier is very exhausting for the girl, but there is no other choice. Glancing over her shoulder at Peck, she thinks he's in no condition to fight. She watched and remembered what the young man had said before. Huajian pondered over the boy's words. It had been a long time since she had heard of worrying about loved ones. She was even kind of embarrassed by it. Staring at the wall, the girl thinks it's something she doesn't deserve. This is also where she remembers that an inanimate can crawl out of any crevice. She thinks about tearing down the wall completely and wants to find a way to lure it out and destroy it. The woman stood up and called out to Huajian. The blonde-haired girl is dumbfounded at how quickly her aunt wakes up, but the woman questions her about what she forgot in her house. Huajian grabbed the woman's hand with both of her hands. With burning eyes, she introduced herself to the woman as her nephew's friend. She mentioned that Bake will be her partner, and they are at her house to save the woman. Huajian asks not to worry. She has everything under control. The woman is frightened by such insistence and persistence of Huajian. The aunt, exhaling doomedly, says that she has no idea what the two of them are talking about. Walking away in the other direction from the girl, the woman says, "I have no idea how you got here. The last thing I remember is being shot and passing out. I don't care, it's late. I'll call security first and then call your parents. Huajian didn't realize what had happened. While the woman was looking for the phone, Huajian was still standing in a stupor, not realizing what had happened. A woman notices that there are a lot of misses on her phone from favorite Kongwan, but she doesn't realize who it is or when she had time to add it. Huajian ran up to ask about Beck, but Auntie only covered her face with her palm doomfully. The woman turns around and is already yelling about how she doesn't know anyone here in the apartment, and she doesn't have a nephew. Huajian didn't expect this turn of events. She was in a stupor. The girl looks at Kangwon with her head down. After all, no one understands what's going on. With what happened to the guy, she's more shocked. Kangwon admits that he felt nothing after his younger brother's death. Oblivious adults ask Peck what's wrong. The guy's gaze is directed nowhere, while grown men worry about his condition. Kangwon made a bow and thanked him for his help with the funeral arrangements. The adults reassure the kid, saying that as friends of the family, they were obligated to help. The woman asks back, "Maybe you came to see Chu Yue one last time?" Grief-stricken, Kangwon stares indifferently at his late brother. Behind the boy's back, family friends can be heard cursing the fact that his parents were buried first and his brother's burial was delayed. Kangwon's ears heard the words, "Even though they weren't related, they got along so well." He was distracted from his thoughts by the question of whether Peck was a relative. It was the worker who needed to start the cremation. The young man apologized to him for the delay. Tsuyue's coffin is loaded into the furnace, and the whole box begins to blaze with bright flames. He, looking at the hot blaze in the furnace, mentally answers the woman's question. He did not come here to say goodbye. His eyes reflect flames and hatred. He came to make sure that Kui Yue was dead, nothing more. The adults are concerned, but let the young man rest. They will do the rest on their own. He wanted to get away quickly to his favorite aunt who was waiting for him. She walked beside him, putting her hand on the boy's shoulder. The red thread on her pinky finger bound them together. Family friends are not quite sure who this aunt is. They believe that Kangwon's father had a sister. Auntie is very important to Beck. He wants to make it easier for her if he acts like a normal person. For her sake, the boy is willing to leave his doubts behind. Kangwon asks Tsu Yue, "Why did you say you killed mom and dad? Why do I still feel the knife I stabbed you in the chest?" Even though everyone says it couldn't have happened, Peck had come to terms with the fact that he was considered mentally ill. He's also put up with the slander. He was doing it for his aunt. That way he was able to act like a normal person. But now it's all turned out to be a lie. Kangwon says his brother's name in a rage. It started like an earthquake. The phone slipped out of the woman's hands. The aunt panics and Huajian realizes how bad things are. She thinks the inanimate's attack has gotten stronger and the barrier is about to collapse. The bell on her hand jingled. She manages to grab the woman and leap aside. After landing, Huajian got into position. She was ready to defend herself. The girl was angry that the barrier had broken so quickly. She could only save one. Huajian notices his silhouette with his hand raised in the thick dust. He restrains the inanimate and addresses it. Holding the huge mouth with his bandaged hand, Beck continues to speak to him. Kangwon assumes that the original target was himself. The gaze, discharging electric lightning, is directed at the monster, and the young man says, "Tell me, is it just because of that bastard's eye?" Kangwon materialized the creature with his energy. The woman screams in fear. While Auntie is trembling in fear and apprehension, Huajian doesn't understand why she sees an inanimate. The girl doesn't understand why it's like this. She wonders why they can see him. Baek is still restraining the inanimate with his hand. The creature, with its massive arms, is trying to escape. But Kangwon immediately denies any attempt by him to escape the premises. He squeezes the monster with his hand, and blood oozes out as he does so. Coming face to face with the monster, Peck utters, "I'm going to send you back to hell." Pain is not only felt by Kangwon, but also by the inanimate. Coming out of her stupor, Huajian activated the spiritual blade amulet. With a thunderous boom, the girl chopped the creature in half. His mouth breaks apart and flies off to the side. From the young man's hand, the flesh of the inanimate is torn. Huajian lands a sword strike after a flurry of punches. Peck sitting with a mangled right hand. She's covered in blood after what she did to the inanimate. The girl wanted to say something to him. Kangwon interrupted, addressing her by her first name. He agreed to become partners, but the young man has a condition. Kangwon tells her, "Even if it's a straight train to hell, if you feel like it, I'll jump on it and won't let you go, regardless of whether I die or not." Huajian clearly likes this kind of attitude. The sun's rays try to slip between the houses. A commotion starts. Someone screams about a monster appearing in their house. There are several police cars on the scene. The woman herself was trying to prove to people that she hadn't imagined the monster, that it was real. She is very scared, frightened, and upset that no one believes her. A man walks up to her and says, "Are you scared of the monster?" The woman reacts very sharply to the question and starts screaming. The man touched her forehead and began to erase the memory of what had happened. He asked me not to worry and just forget about everything. A man in a mask and with a bell around his neck asks us to forget those horrible memories. Wang Zhe and Yu Mumu stand near the wall while people bustle in front of them. They've obviously done something wrong. The girl asks Uncle Wang, "Will he take care of the rest?" To which she gets a positive answer. Uncle Wang says there are few like him among those who can do such a thing. Mumu thinks about if the caretaker thinks it is hard for a person to accept what has happened, then he takes action. But she has a different opinion. The girl notices someone. In front of her stood the very man who had erased the woman's memories. This is the caretaker, the memory suppressor. He said he had finished his work, but reminded me to give a detailed report on what had happened. Some red ball sticking out from under the umbrella was struck, as if by a small lightning bolt. The bell on his chest jingled quickly. This ringing alarms the masked gentleman. Looking over his shoulder, he apologizes to the air. He says that the sun is already out and he should rest. Mumu stands with a face of incomprehension. The man had an inanimate sitting on his shoulder and holding a bell. The caretaker turned to the girl and told her that the inanimate was always with him. The little guy made sure the girl couldn't see his kind, so the man simply erased the memories of the incident. He asks not to worry about the creature. It's an inferior inanimate, homemade. It will not harm anyone and is only used for work. This is the first time Mumu has heard of such a thing. She clarifies that he can't see the creature, but he is quite comfortable. With practice, he learned how to send simple messages through the bell. Since it is an inferior inanimate, even simple sunlight can harm it. The caretaker considers him a glorious boy. The man says it's easy to work with and they have a good relationship, but the creature is actually secretly pulling his hair. Mumu questions whether it's worth ruining a beautiful fantasy while the creature tugs hard on the man's hair. The caretaker says that he has something he is excited about. The girl, who was suppressed by the caretaker's memories, had never seen an inanimate before this incident. The man can't understand why people either see or lose the ability to see the inanimate. The man had experienced this phenomenon in the past when he could see them. However, this situation has recurred in adulthood. He wants to know the cause. The caretaker asks Mumu and Mr. Wang if they have any leads. Yui was thinking about something 40 minutes ago. Huajian tearfully pleads with Mumu, clutching at her arm. The blonde-haired girl yells out that Kangwan has hurt his arm and needs to go to the hospital. She asked for help hiding him for the duration of the caretaker's presence, but Mumu flatly refused her. Wang Ji, on the other hand, calmly observed the scene. Huajian says not for long, as her mentor will return and demand a report. Mumu was very tense at the words said about the mentor. Reluctantly, but she agreed nonetheless. Yui informed the man that she wasn't dealing with an inanimate. It was Huajian. The masked man was surprised and asked, "From the Tu family?" He wanted to call her that defective one, but something stopped him. He was stopped by Mumu's fervent, sizzling gaze. He apologized and had already started talking about making a report from Huajian. He was interrupted by Mumu. She said she would write the report from the blonde girl's words. A little tense in the dialogue of these guys, the caretaker agreed, and in the absence of any service requests, he wants to leave. Wang Ji thanked him for his work, and a masked man under an umbrella headed in the opposite direction from them. Mr. Wang only called out Yu's name as she shouted out with the words, "I know I do." She echoed Wang Zhe's words. "You can't cover Huajian for a lifetime." Even though Huajian gives Mumu a lot of trouble, she still considers her a friend. If a friend asks for help, she is obliged to help her. Wang Ji, with a calm, plausible face, smiles slightly. Mumu asks Uncle Wang about Huajian's punishment. As far as she knows, the top brass has no power over citizens who aren't members of the organization. Otherwise, the blonde-haired girl wouldn't get off so easily. Wang Ji says that the child is too unobedient and causes a lot of trouble. That's why he frightened her. Mumu doubts that Uncle Wang is even human. A caretaker under an umbrella walks among the people. He was thinking about something. A man recalls the moment he erased that girl's memory. The thread on his pinky finger began to emit a faint red light. This thread begins to break up into particles. It disintegrated to the point of total extinction. During the memory suppression procedure, the caretaker noticed his pinky finger. It was as if something had happened. Only now, having finished his work and leaving the scene, he realized that it was an illusion. The technique of faking the memory of living people. With his powers, the man just couldn't help but notice it. A lively city flooded with sunshine. The pedestrian crosswalk light is green. People began to move across the road. He sees the world differently. He moves toward the woman and the dark-haired boy. The boy's surprised gaze drifted forward. The little boy told his mom that his friend was there and rushed over to him. The boy runs through the gray-haired guy. He noticed something and turned around. At the same moment, he tripped over his own foot. He fell flat on the road. The kid's mom scolds him for running in the road and rushing to get up because the light is about to turn red. At that moment, a gray-haired guy was watching. While his mom talks to him, the boy looks at him. He sees the ghost he originally ran through. Chu Yue, while all the people pass through him, holds his index finger at his mouth, showing that he doesn't need to tell anyone anything, and smiles. He smiles, but there's a huge monster behind him, a monster that seems to serve as a portal for humans. The boy is frightened by the sight he sees. Out of fright, the baby started sobbing in the middle of the road, and at this time, Kui Yue walked away. Some toothy guy with a two-tone hairdo is shocked by what he sees. He addresses the gray-haired young man, calling him one of the boring guys who scare kids. Tsu Yue turned his attention to this toothy fellow. The gray-haired kid with a smile on his face says that the road is indeed dangerous, so the boy should learn his lesson. That's not what the toothy guy means. The toothy guy calls Kui Yue a newcomer and tells him to listen. He reminds him that he is dead and living people are their food. Raising children is not part of the job description. Guy asks Tsu not to pretend to be alive. It's only been a year since Yue's death, but the toothy guy asks to be remembered. Tsu replies, "Indeed. If I've only been dead for a year and you've been dead longer, you're older than me. You clearly have a respectable amount of experience." During the gray-haired guy's speech, the scarred idiot was praising and raising his self-esteem. The toothy guy turns away with the feeling of being bullied. He's starting to think he's getting worked up over nothing. He gets up from the table and tells Tsu to follow me. Two young men are in the background. One of them is happy to see an empty seat. People are outraged that someone left a drink and they think they are rude. The young men threw the drink in the trash can. They rejoice as if they've done a good deed. The two-colored guy looked at them with a sizzling gaze. He stabs one of the guys in the neck with his dark energy. His friend is shocked by what he sees. He doesn't know what to do. The guy who was hit by the dark energy feels like he's suffocating and can't do anything about it. It's a two-colored guy holding the boy by the neck and asking, "What makes you think this seat is free?" He raises this guy's hand and goes on to say that he threw someone else's drink away without permission. The toothy guy squeezes his hand with such force that both bones in it break. The guy, gasping and bleeding, screams in pain. A two-colored demon with blackened eyes calls the guy a bastard. He's starting to absorb the guy's life energy. Tsu Yue addresses the violent idiot as brother. The gray-haired guy reminds them that they need to go to the trial and not be late while doing so. The man only gave him a beastly look. But Tsu Yue doesn't care about the expression on the toothy guy's face. He only smiles back at him. The two-colored guy came to his senses and dropped his toy. He tells Tsu, "Speaking of which, when we made the plan, this area was counting on more, so we'll have to find out what the problem is." Yue has a question. The gray-haired guy clarifies. It wasn't because of the caretakers, but the toothy guy only laughs in response. He turned and interjected with a cocky smile. Caretakers? The toothy guy thinks the caretakers are people who play heroes by killing the inanimate. He asks Tsu to stay out of it and let them play. At that moment, he waves his hand and all the birds drop dead. If the gray-haired guy passes the test, his next assignment will be to help build a nest. They get to the site. The toothy guy says the test is simple, and the gray-haired guy just needs to get rid of the out-of-control thing. A large monster stands in front of them, clearly wanting to eat someone. The young man is a little surprised at the magnitude of the simple task. The toothy fellow proudly informs him, "My last junior." He recently fell under the influence of the nest and immediately lost control of himself. He can't be helped. He asks me not to look at him like that. He used to like this guy. The two-colored guy continues to say that Junior, although he lost his self-knowledge, and from the former he was left only a shell, but he is still as strong, and after all, with a toothy guy for 20 years. Tsu Yue sets conditions. If the guy fails in 3 hours, he will die along with the creature. The toothy guy goes to rest and wait out the time, but warns the new guy not to even try to escape, because he won't succeed. Tsu Yue asks the elder to wait for him for a while. The older one isn't thrilled with the request. He doesn't want to watch him. The gray-haired guy, stepping away from the barrier, replies to the two-colored guy, "I'll be quick." And while the monster is guttural about already attacking the frivolous dead man, Tsu Yue says with a smile that she also wants tea and milk. A building hiding the rays of the mischievous sun. Manager Mei Tianxiang. She is talking to someone, asking who the girl learned to pick up the kids from. The girl in the long skirt is just a house manager, not a doctor or nanny. The girl who directed all these words is Huajan. The woman asks the girl to enter her situation. She is about to go through menopause. A blonde-haired girl suddenly brought some guy, says he is her partner, and asks to cure him. A woman in a long skirt asked that Huajan wants the manageress to suffer from insomnia. With her pretty face shining, the blonde-haired girl calls the manageress a joker and calls her as bright and gorgeous as she is. Mei Tianxiang remarks that her lips are still sweet, to which Huajan actively agrees. But the flirtatious mood is replaced by a quiet ferocity. The manager wants to know what the blonde girl is trying to hide. Huajan bowed her head with her hands in a prayer pose, calling Mei the wisest. The woman started eating chips out of boredom and saying that she would finally answer honestly. When Mei Tian was treating Baek Kangwon, she discovered something. The dark-haired boy's right eye belongs to a dead man. Huajan is shocked to hear this, as it is the first time she has heard such a thing. The manager calls it rare and says it's more like a legend she's read in literature. Mei Tian began to speak. A living person's eye was replaced with an eye that originally appeared in the afterlife, filled with the energy of the dead. All attempts to conduct such an experiment ended in death, but this child survived and lives with him. A true miracle. Huajan is surprised that the eye has been replaced. Physically, the eye belongs to Baek Kangwon, not even a graft, but not at the soul level. It's something related to death, hence the name Eye of the Dead. Mei Tianxiang remarks that the young man has been through a lot, but nothing is known about the eye's abilities. There are no records. Huajan thought about something. She began to tell a story involving the Eye of the Dead. The blonde-haired girl was just as able to see the inanimate as the average person next to her. The manageress figured out the girl. She figured out why she was trying to hide the boy. After all, if it became public knowledge, he would not be able to avoid the pause of examination. Tianxiang points at Huajan and says that they are not partners. The girl began to speak honestly and admitted that she brought the guy here because of her own selfishness. But Huajan also believes that he wouldn't like being a guinea pig. The blonde-haired girl wants Baek Kangwon to be more free. Mei wonders why Huajan used to be a reckless girl and now cares so much about her partner. The manageress finds the children's growing up the most interesting. She is very sweet to watch and wants to help. Huajan asks where her mentor is. Can she not worry about the caretakers? Aunt Mei replies that she has no idea. From this answer, the blonde-haired girl became very tense, and Mei Tian continued eating her chips and saying that when the free man had less problems outside, he would probably come back. Someone knocked on the door of the superintendent's office. They were the children Aunt Mei had asked to look after Baek Kangwon. They came running in fear to tell me that the dark-haired injured boy was being beaten. Both girls are shocked at what they've heard. Mei asked the child to repeat what she said. The girl repeated that Baek was being molested by another brother. Huajan is in a complete stupor. Baek Kangwon is pinned against the wall and is being identified. Some blonde guy has the nerve to ask, "Who authorized you to be Huajan's partner?" Blondie goes over the top while standing on Kangwon's bed. He says he's not welcome here and cheekily orders him to get out of here immediately, calling Baek a bastard. Kangwon caught deja vu, only this time it's a guy. The dark-haired young man is really annoyed by this. Tsu Yue wonders to the elder how they are going to buy tea if the living can't see them. The toothy guy replies, raising his index finger. Very simple. One word. They watch a cashier taking orders from customers. The girl had a classic tea with milk. Passing by, a guy walked through the two-colored guy and Tsu Yue. The girl puts a glass of tea on the table. The toothy guy picks up the glass, demonstrating a way to get tea by being a ghost. Tsu Yue marvels at this, even though he didn't understand it at all. The older man gives the glass to the gray-haired guy and waits for the next one. A customer asks the cashier if his drink is ready. The girl notices that there is money on the counter and worries that she forgot to give the cup back. She asks the customer to wait another minute. 4 hours later, the toothy guy is lying on the counter, blowing tears and wondering why. He's upset that no one takes milk and coriander tea. Tsu Yue gets goosebumps just from the name. Tsu wants to comfort his elder and decides to try it himself. Yue walked up to the girl cashier. He told the girl, "Excuse me," and touched her finger. He transmitted energy through touch. The girl looked up sharply, as if she'd come to her senses while she was counting the money, and began urgently writing down orders for milk and coriander tea, while Tsu distanced himself from her at this point. The gray-haired guy brought the older man a drink he really wanted. The toothy guy calls Tsu an angel out of happiness and admiration, but the latter is called back by the younger, Tsu Yue. Peck wanted to answer the brash blonde, but Kangwon, pointing at the brazen idiot's sneakers, only asked, "Didn't they teach you that when you get into bed, you should take off your shoes?" The dark-haired guy with a smile on his face clarified to the blonde guy that he is a wild monkey. If that's the case, it's fine, and Kangwon asks simply to remove his shoes from his hind legs, thanking him in advance. Baek Kangwon doesn't usually throw around harsh remarks, but too much happened in one day. The thing that shocked him the most was that the relative who had been supporting him for the past year turned out to be just a fake. That's why the guy still couldn't come to his senses. He is now on the verge of an emotional breakdown. And when this single-celled creature appeared in front of him, he had only one thought in his mind. Clenching his bandaged hand into a fist, the dark-haired boy wishes only that this monkey would go away. The blonde man's face of hatred changed to innocence. Looking into his eyes, he asked how Kangwon knew his nickname. Peck fell out of reality after the idiot's words. Someone's breaking into Kangwon's room. Hwazan tries to open the door, but the handle won't budge in any way, gloriously jammed. Mei assumed she had been sealed. The door is sealed from the inside with an amulet. Monkey, hearing Hwazan's voice, finally took his hands off the irritated Kanwon. The girl heard the voice of a monkey named Lewin. The blonde suggests aloud that it might be harassment, even though she is the perpetrator of the incident. At this point, the children learn a new word for harassment, and Mei Tian recognizes the source of such words. Hwazan tries to figure out why Lewin locked the door and asks to open it, and the manageress tells the kids that she'll give them a morality lesson the next day. Monkey rebuffs the girl and says he won't put up with it. Blondie is offended because Hwazan's partner was Baek Kangwon instead of Lewin. The blonde-haired girl was already tired of explaining to him about how he didn't need a partner because he was already dead. 5 groups are dead. Levine. The monkey, embarrassed by his insolence, says, "Well, I feel like I've been out of shape lately, so I need a partner." Hwazan asks why he's being so stupid and tells him to start by learning how to lie and not to do that anymore. A blonde-haired girl addresses the monkey, talking about how he knows why she wants to be dead so badly. How badly she needs it. But even with that, the damn monkey is dead set against Kangwon. He's not sure about the girl's defense all the time because Baek doesn't know anything. At this moment, the dark-haired guy punched the arm of that insolent blonde guy. Dumbass went silent after taking a punch to the arm. Kangwon says to the monkey, "Learn to restrain yourself. I'm sick of your rudeness. And don't call me that guy, I actually have a name." Monkey grabbed Baek by the scruff of the neck, calling him a daredevil who dared to make a remark. Kangwon replied not to flatter him. "Debt is payment for debt." While the kids and the manager silently watch, the girl tries to yell at the guys not to fight. Mei Tian started talking about how teenagers in the current times were nothing but trouble. The woman made a snap of her fingers. Everyone moved to another room. Both idiots turned to one side. Mei asked why Lywin had gotten those insignificant amulets. The guy must have forgotten who the hostess is. As long as she's inside the building, there's nothing she can't change. As everyone sat in silence, Hwazan remembered this room. The administrator and the girl started chatting with each other, while the guys were in the room like superfluous elements. Kanwon swept his eyes over the two of them as they were definitely in the chamber a moment ago. And in the blink of an eye, everything changed. Even the monkey got quiet. Baek looks at the woman in the long skirt and thinks it's all about her. She sends the children to rest at this point, telling them that the boys will stay in the room with her for the time being. Mei made a clap of her palms, saying that it was almost done, and Levine and Kangwon can continue what they started. The monkey and the dark-haired guy didn't expect this turn of events. Hwazan is shocked to hear this, and Mei remarks that she has prepared a room for the boys, so they can continue. The blonde-haired girl yells that they don't need them to fight. Mei Tianxiang thinks otherwise. The two of them don't trust or understand each other. If the fight doesn't happen, the problems won't be solved. Hwazan recalled that Kangwon was injured. That's not a hindrance for the manageress. She made another snap of her fingers. From his hand, he began to untie the bandage. His palm and fingers were completely normal, as if complete skin regeneration had occurred in that one snap. Peck noticed that the recovery was almost over. Also, Tianxiang forbade the monkey from using magic. That way, everything will be fair. She reassured them, saying everything was fine. The woman said that wrestling is about emotions. She wants them to show them. Lavin agreed to this, but he has one condition. If Baek loses, he'll have to leave here and he can't partner up with Hwazan. Baek wanted to state his terms, but the monkey interrupted him by saying that he couldn't lose. Kanwon stated his condition. "If you lose, you will call me daddy." Monkey turned defiantly to Peck to find out what he was bellowing. That green-eyed blonde man was offended by Kangwon's condition. While the idiot was thinking, the dark-haired young man tried to strike. Peck is determined and will not back down. That damn monkey didn't even realize the fight had already started. Kangwon prepared to punch with his other hand. Lavin noticed and put up a block, but the blow came in hard, so strong that this blonde guy flew back a couple of meters. Kangwon says he's never seen such fools. In a fight, do you really have to be warned that you're about to get hit?
Pet the cat.